Ms. Berman, and then Mr. Hedrick. Excuse me. Ms. Berman.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and council members. My name is Brenda Berman. I'm with the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. I echo the accolades. This has been an incredible amount of work. I know in the last 2 months it has been overtime for staff all the time. And I appreciate their reaching out and always being willing to meet with us, to meet with Ag Urban Coalition, and to discuss through the issues. Likewise for council members. I really appreciate the openness there. In looking at the language that has come out, I would on Monday or Tuesday, I would say that it is more clear. I think it's easier to read. I would echo the Ag Urban's proposal about some of the changes that should be made. Last time I was here 2 weeks ago, I talked a lot about what does it mean when you say water should not be exported from, transferred through, or used in the Delta if one or more water suppliers that would receive that water are not adequately contributing to reduce reliance. And we had a long back and forth discussion about that. I just want to echo parts of that. When you look at Section 85021 from the Delta Reform Act, it usually uses the language region or regional 6 times, more if you imply it through all these commas. It says the state of California's policy is to reduce reliance on the Delta through improved regional supplies, conservation, and water use efficiency. The focus of that statute is on regions. When you say what will happen here, you look at Metropolitan, 26 member agencies, hundreds of water managers. Which of those actually qualify as water suppliers? I guess it'll depend what the footnote ends up looking like. But even if you assume even 150 water suppliers, the way I look at the test is we would go down to 1, 2, and 3, and it says complete an urban or agricultural management plan. Well, for all those water suppliers, so 26 member agencies, maybe 150, 180 more water suppliers. So say we have 200. So for those 200 agencies, we would probably look up on DWR's report who has filed their urban management plan and who's in compliance with that. And if they haven't, we would check the records. We'd see if they're in the middle of finishing it, if they were sent back, was it incomplete, what was the reason for that. On number 2, it says identify, evaluate, commence implementation of all programs and projects that are locally cost effective and technically feasible. I appreciate Martha's example on this. I hope it's in the administrative record. When I look to Martha's example, it says, how would you comply with this? And it says, you would send a letter. You'd ask the water supplier to send a letter. And that letter would say, we certify that we are in compliance with this. I think that puts you in the same position that you're talking about with DWR, because then you put the wholesaler in the position of collecting publicly available information. And we can do that. It certainly causes an administrative burden, but we could go to each of these agencies. We could ask them for a letter, these 200 agencies, and maybe they'll respond and maybe they won't. And maybe they'll respond that, yes, we are absolutely in compliance. And under Martha's example, we would say, great. We would put that letter in the file. And if they don't respond, then we have a much bigger issue, because someone mentioned personality differences or agency differences or litigation between agencies, or at what point do all of these smaller agencies have an incentive to comply with a large wholesaler or a small wholesaler for some of our colleagues? Sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. And so that, I believe, under this test would put Metropolitan in the position of going back, collecting publicly available information about what is in these plans and what has happened in these plans. On number 2, you could read to mean that Metropolitan would have to follow up on all these agencies, look at their agendas, look at their budgets. Did they really implement all of the projects that they were supposed to? I appreciate that the example doesn't use the word all, and I think that would be very helpful. On number 3 of the test, number 3 says you will have included in your plan by 2015 measurable outcomes for reducing reliance. That is not currently state law, and I appreciate that there's a recommendation, it looks like, for how that might become state law. It looks like you probably need legislation. Maybe staff has found a way that you don't. So for an entity, say if Metropolitan is looking to do a transfer, we could certainly include this in our urban water management plans by 2015. But how do we force 200 retail agencies, 200 separate agencies to do that, when they really have very little incentive to do it. If we can't entice them to do that, if they don't want to, or if they say this isn't part of state law and this will cost us money and we're not quite sure how to do it, then I think what this policy says is that Metropolitan will dig into all those urban water management plans and figure out for itself whether they have followed through and how much the reduction might be and how that would work. I think that's a significant administrative burden. I think it's been minimized, and perhaps maybe you'll make a phone call here or you'll accept information there. And maybe that really is what the council and staff are looking for, and I think the example helps in explaining that. What I think would work best, and I think I agree with Mr. Nelson here, is language that was provided by the Ag Urban Coalition 2 weeks ago. And it said up at the beginning of WRP1, instead of one or more water suppliers, it said you would look at the service area of the entity applying for the covered action. And so for Metropolitan, you would look at the 7-county service area for Metropolitan. If it was a smaller agency, say Eastern Municipal Water District, you would look at Eastern Municipal Water District's area. It allows then the entity that's applying for the action to control within its community as much as possible what happens within their own community. There was some unattributed language that was part of the packet. I would say that we saw this language yesterday. What the unattributed language attempts to do is it attempts to do both. It attempts to say, yes, you will be kind of the reporter of information for all of these small retail individuals. And yes, you will tell us where they are in their plans and are they commencing their plans. But it also says that when it comes down to the test, that one of the ways that you can be in compliance is if the region in the aggregate as a whole is reducing its reliance on the delta. And then it goes back to the test that isn't used for anywhere else in the actual policy of are you reducing the amount of water used or the percentage amount of water used. We've looked at that language. I think that language could be useful. I think it needs to be shown to a lot of other people as well and get their opinions. So I would urge you to look again at the entity that is applying for the action and be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, questions? Thank you, Ms. Berman. Appreciate that very much. Ms. Gray?
Was this the language, the attachment that we have, was this just given out this morning or was this given to DSC staff? This language, this proposed language for Metropolitan, was this given to Joe earlier today or was it?
It was in some back and forth emails. I don't believe it was posted anywhere.
So just recently, you haven't had a chance to look at it?
Yesterday afternoon.
See, okay. All right. Thank you.